Foxen virtual tasting for December 2020, a year we will all remember. I wish it could be an actual tasting, but here we are, folks, adapting to the new world. Anyway, we've got three wonderful wines from the vintage of 2017 to taste today. And Billy has got tons of information to give you on this. And anyway, you all. I see you all out there, I guess. And
all right.
Anyway, the only thing we're missing is Michaela's fine food. So here we are, sampling a wine.
And yes, and we want to thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully you're all safe and hunkered down, and thanks for joining us. All right.
You're gonna moderate. Go ahead.
All right. So Bill.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you lead us off here, and would you want to talk about start with the wine?
Where do we want to start here?
Let's start with 2017 vintage. Why it has been one of the best that we've
Okay. Of course, 17 was the first ample rainfall year following the 13, 14, and 15 drought. We kind of had normal rainfall in 16, but 17 was the first year of full recovery from that drought. And undoubtedly, we're going to have another vintage like 17 because I think we're going into another long-term drought. So we'll have a recovery vintage as well in the future. But it was nice. We had plenty of rainfall, a good growing season, and we only had one outrageous heat wave in, of course, Labor Day weekend again. And luckily we were able to get the critical part of these heat waves during harvest are with the Pinot Noir, because Pinot Noir can't handle it when it gets 118 degrees, which I think it did that Labor Day weekend. Anyway, we were able to dodge that. And so the wines are all very drinkable at this point, 17 vintage. And I'll talk about each wine as we get into it. But I'd also like to kind of touch base on what's going on in the winery and in the vineyard right now before we get into these wines, and talk a little bit about the 2020 harvest. So, you know, back in the day, all we had usually to worry about during harvest was rain. Is it going to rain or not on our harvest? But these days, there are multiple things that we have to encounter during harvest, not just the threat of rain, which is not the threat it used to be, but the heat waves are phenomenal now. And the 2020 vintage, we had to dodge three big ones. They were really warm, one in August, two in September. And the one in September, we actually hit 120 degrees. And so it was tough, but we were able to. It took a lot of brainstorming to kind of figure out how to dodge these heat waves around our fruit picks, and we were able to do it, and it was pretty stressful. And it's not just the heat waves now, but it's also it's fire season now during harvest and most of the year in California, and smoke is another demon that we have to deal with during harvest. And we were lucky to not have any ground smoke or close fires in Santa Barbara County. And so that worked on our side. The other thing that we had to deal with in 2020 was, of course, the pandemic. And we had this kind of overriding fear and anxiety every day of not knowing if the crew was going to be there. And you just had this fear that if we lost one person on the crew, we were going to lose everybody because we'd all have to quarantine. And that would be an automatic shutdown for 2 weeks. So it was a very, it was a vintage of high anxiety, and I've never had to go through that before in any of my years of harvesting, and that goes back to 1975. Never been a harvest like this. On the other end, the fruit quality this year was the best thing about 2020 for the whole year. It was just awesome fruit across the board, and it's going to be so nice to be able to do this with the 2020 bottlings when they do come up. Anyway, it was the weirdest feeling harvest ever for me.
So Bill, so the result was that we didn't have, because of our protocol, we didn't have any.
We didn't have any problems.
Okay.
So we were able to just harvest as normal, if there's a normal in 2020. And they're showing real well. And in the winery right now, we've just finished doing the chemistry on all the 2020 wines. They're all super balanced. I'm happy with every one of them. Of all the Pinots, all the Syrahs, all the Rhônes, all the Bordeauxs. They're really well balanced and have great chemistry, and that's a great starting point for us as we go into their aging.
So Billy, before we leave 2020, maybe you could give a rough summation on the yields for this year. And also, I just want to insert, for those, this is a great opportunity for the participants. Please ask questions. There's a Q&A box, should be down towards the bottom of your screen. So please feel free. We encourage you to ask lots of questions. So, but getting back to Bill, if you could maybe address the yields for this year.
Yields were down. And I think some of that had to do with the heat wave in August, where a lot of the clusters got burned on the east side or morning side, and we had to go in and address that. We had to comb out kind of the burned fruit in each cluster or cut some clusters off, and so we reduced the yield a little bit. But overall, yields were down. Santa Maria Pinot Noir was up, so that was a good thing, because with everything else being down, it's nice to have more Pinot from Santa Maria.
Billy, I got a question here from Catherine, and it's, what does it mean that you dodged a bullet?
It means that we were able to selectively pick things, even if we had to pick a bit earlier, to not have susceptible fruit at the time weather that heat wave. It wouldn't have weathered it. So we had no crucial Pinot Noir on the vines during those heat waves.
Okay, so a couple of questions in this regard. What were the particulars that you look for in the chemistry, Bill?
Just balance. As chemistry as far as a finished wine, or chemistry as far as a picking decision?
Well, you were saying you just got through with the doing the chemistry on the fruit.
Right. The main thing we're looking for is to make sure that the fermentations went completely dry and that the malolactics are finished.
Okay. And what to dodge a heat wave? What are the complications that could happen in a heat wave?
Dehydration. So you don't ever want to be picking raisins. You want to be picking nice plump berries. If you pick raisins, the wine's going to taste like raisins.
Okay, that's a good question. It's something we take for granted here.
Is there any more questions?
So in looking at a heat wave, is there anything that you can do to mitigate? Let's say you're not ready to pick coming in.
Well, culturally, all through the season now, you know, there was a time when we were taking more leaves off and out of the canopy to get sun exposure on the clusters, and we're doing a lot less of that. Leaves are a good thing, and especially in these heat waves that are becoming more common, it's nice to have a little more shade in the canopy than not. And also there's a lot of work going on with micro sprinklers that you can turn on that just humidify the canopy and not wet it, but just humidify it, and it cools it down. There's a lot of stuff going on right now about heat in the vineyard. So it's going to be some stuff going on. It's nice.
You ever add water ahead of a heat wave? I mean,
No, you don't want to. If you put water on, you're just going to change the whole kind of the development of the grape going forward. You don't want to set it back. You don't want to, if you put a lot of water on before a heat wave, it's going to dilute the sugar. So you just, yeah. One of the things we did this year was in some of our vineyards, we picked a little bit earlier when we knew the heat wave was coming. And it was actually good, you know, because we end up with 13 alcohol instead of stuff at 14 or 14 and a half. And those wines are good.
all right, that's exciting. So now that the wines are through malolactic, or what's happening in the cellar now? What's your crew doing at this point?
Well, we just finished, and moving into the new year in January, we're going to rack and assemble our 7,200 blends from 2019. So that's something we always do in the middle of winter. And it's creative and it's fun.
So you're saying that's the Bordeaux you're doing, maybe,
right?
Yeah.
And our Calatal blends.
All right. So any big, anything new for this year that we haven't done in the past? That's
well, let me see. As far as our bottlings for 2021, we'll be bottling the, of course, the 2020 whites and rosés, but the 2019 Rhones, we're going to have a toasted rope Syrah off the estate, and that's a 85 Syrah, 15% Viognier blend, and that's going to be a lot of fun.
Those are co-fermented. Billy, are those co-fermented?
Yes.
Yeah.
all right.
They are off the Tinnaquack estate.
I know people who remember previous toasted ropes are going to be looking forward to that one. All right. Okay, so Bill, so over the next 6 weeks, 2 months, what's going to be happening in
Well, let's talk about what's going on in the vineyard.
right.
Okay, dormancy. So you've got these vines, and the leaves are the kind of the energy source for that vine, and so they're energizing that vine through the growing season. And then once we've picked the fruit, they're done with energizing the vine, and so you want plenty of leaves out there still to work post-harvest to move all those carbohydrates down to the roots, because that's the roots become the kind of the energy bank for that vine during the winter. So above the ground, the vine's pretty much shut down, but it's still working down under the soil. The roots are still looking for nutrients and kind of getting charged up to be the source for when we start budding out in hopefully March, not January, February. But it also, because the vines are bare now without leaves, it gives us an opportunity to check on our stewardship during this past year and see and check out the health of like each vine. You can just walk a row and see if we did a good job with that vine or if there's a problem with that vine growth wise. And so we're doing that right now, and that's fun. It's kind of a zen time of the year out in the vineyard. It's real quiet, not much going on.
Well, and Billy, what's in your seed mixture? I know we've been seeding, getting ready for hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some rain to germinate that seed. But I think it's.
What's in
so this is a nitrogen fixing mix. So we've got pea, bean, and vetch. Those are all nitrogen producing legumes. And then we have some, I think it's some oats in there too, just for fibrous root structure to give us some green matter once we do disc it under in the spring.
Catherine Bush has got a great question here. So do we water the vineyards in the winter, or is the rain enough?
If we're not getting rain and we do have the ability to irrigate in the winter, we do. We need to make rainfall if we're not getting any natural rainfall, so we do that with irrigation. Yeah. And it's something that you have to act like it's raining.
Yeah. So what are your particular challenges? Richard has got a good question here. How do these droughts and heat waves affect our dry farm vineyards, and how do you mitigate?
You can only mitigate by reducing crop size in a low rainfall year, and so that's not very economical at all. The last drought was disastrous for this vineyard yield-wise. I mean, the vines survived because they can, but we had no yield really. And we're, to farm it and only get off of 7 acres of Chardonnay, 2 barrels.
Which is what happened in 2015. Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So we start tasting wine?
So yeah, should we start tasting, Billy?
Yeah. So this is the current GIST release shipment. They're all from the 2017 vintage that we touched base on earlier. We'll start with the Julia's. Julia's vineyard is a vineyard we've been sourcing from since 1996. I think Dick could tell us a little bit about our introduction to Julia's from Jess Jackson after the Mondavis bought our Sierra Madre source of Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were rather desperate. In fact, back in 96, everybody was stealing everybody's fruit, just trying to get some. We were lucky enough to have Jess buy the property next to us, and he came in and with his entourage one day and tasted our wine, said, "You guys are doing a pretty good job. Can I do anything to help you?" And I said, "Yes, sell us some fruit." And he said, "Well, I'll check with my wife, Barbara, who runs the vineyard." And they started selling us 5 tons of fruit per year, 4 to 5, depending on the year and the production. And it's become, I think, one of my favorite wines. And it's just a wine we've been making now since 1996. And it's become one of the premier wines of our Pinot stable.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Julia is named for Barbara and Jess's youngest child, Julia, and Catherine's vineyard is their Chardonnay. So that's the, and I'm reading another question from Catherine. So Billy, you can answer this. I know the Julia's comes from their older section, but Catherine is asking, is Julia the original name of the vineyard?
The blocks that we source from, we move around in here because, of course, some of the blocks get old, and so you want to kind of move to a healthier block. But okay, I just lost track here.
The dog circus going on.
Yeah, I got confused by the dogs here. What was the question?
They want to know dinner. Julia, the original name of the vineyard.
Oh, well, the original vineyard was Tepske Vineyard, planted in 1972 and 73 by the Lucas brothers. And when the Jackson family came in and established Cambria, the winery, and took over the vineyard holdings, they took a lot of the existing vineyard out, but they did keep some of the older blocks that go back to 1973. And that's exciting because as of 2020 vintage, we've moved into that block of Julia's that was planted in 1973. And these vines, a little bit younger than our Nesta Wicken and Chenin Blanc vines, but they're just as awesome as the Ernesto Wickenden vines. They're old, they're big, they don't carry a lot of fruit, and the fruit's got this kind of wonderful austerity to it that you only get from old vines. So it's kind of neat. The Julias that we're tasting here is from a younger block, not really younger, but planted in the early 90s. So 30 years old. And of course, this is a high density block. The rows are aligned north-south, so you get a little more sunlight during the working day. And Julia's also is light and fragile. It doesn't have the density and the darkness of color that we get from our Bien Nacido higher elevations and more slope. So these wines are always very see-through and translucent and pretty, and a lot of baking spice and all those wonderful cola and root beer notes that come from the Santa Maria Valley.
I think there's a really pretty femininity to Julia's every year.
Always, yeah. It's in the sweet spot on the flatter ground, and it's not going to be a block 8. It's not going to be a block 43, but it's always very pretty. And yeah, she's my girlfriend every year.
I thought it was mine. So the clonal makeup at the 2017, I know Julia's is very often predominantly.
This is always Pomard.
Yeah,
it's always 100% Pomard. So another reason for the translucent, beautiful see-through color on this is because Pomard is not it's a little plumper than our Dijon clones. So the berries get a little bit bigger, and so the skins get a little bit thinner. And so you're never going to have a dark Pinot Noir off our Julia site. And I kind of like that. I like Pinot Noir to be this pretty.
And Billy, I think one of the questions I get very often, particularly about this wine, because it is lighter in color and more feminine, the ageability of the Julias.
No issue with ageability.
Yeah. I find it ages as well as the
just as well as any of our other Pinots. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any question?
Yeah. Anybody have any questions or comments? Do you have a bottle of Julia's opened? Hopefully.
Ours is almost half gone.
I know, Dick started early. No?
Doesn't look
Well,
like-
should we
Yeah.
move on to the
Yeah,
Williamson Doré vineyard?
yeah.
sure. Please.
Well, this vineyard
Let's get it in the glass.
has special for us because we planted it back in '99 when Jenny and I bought this property in San Ynez. It's 7 acres, 4 acres of Syrah, 2 different clones with 2 different rootstocks. Things I might have done differently, but in all, it's been a very good vineyard. This year, we didn't quite get the production off of it because, as Billy explained, we had heat problems, and we were 120 here as well. So anyway, it's a beautiful vineyard. It's very low production, high quality. Billy, you want to talk about it?
Sure. The vineyard's at the point now, so we're at 99, 19, yeah,
20.
over 20 years old. And it seems to be just in the past few years starting to struggle enough to, if you can relate to this, make some phenomenal wine. This 17 is one of the highlights of what we bottled in 2019.
So Billy, do you want to address where we are in the Los Olivos district that people may not be, since it's so new, people may not be familiar?
Oh, okay. Los Olivos district is our newest AVA it's been a couple of years now. American viticultural area. And the Williamson Doré vineyard sits on the east end of that AVA. Oh, just about probably as the crow flies a mile from the west end of Happy Canyon AVA. So it's a warmer site, and it's sitting on this baked clay soil that is really hard and dense, and you really can't walk in it if it's rain because you'll be 6 inches taller, with a lot of rock cobble in the mud too. But the wines, granted, we're usually about 2 tons of the acre. In a good year, we're 3.5 tons of the acre.
So what is I've got a question here from Scott. What's the lifespan of a Syrah planting like Williamson Doré?
As long as you want it to be economical, make some money off the growing. Yeah, I mean, if it gets down to 1 ton the acre, you got to say, well, it's time to replant.
We added a lot of new vines this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But realize that 2 tons to the acre, it's variable, and every year it's a little bit different. And
it's hard. You're on the one end, on Dick's end, you're farming and spending a lot of time and money farming these grapes, and then you're rewarded with maybe not enough yield to make it profitable. But then the wines on my end is phenomenal. And so, yeah, what's the trade-off?
farming costs don't change, but yields do.
Yeah,
And that's the thing right there.
yeah.
So the thing I like about the telltale notes of the Williamson Doré vineyard is always that kind of blackberry and lavender, kind of a combination of both of those. And then I always get this road tar element that I really like, that kind of solidifies the wine, the whole mid palate of the wine. Yeah. And these.
So Bill, what do you see are the key differences and conversely the similarities between our Tinnaquaque Syrah and the Williamson Doré Syrah?
Okay, so a cool climate actually versus Williamson Doré on the Tinnaquaque end. So Tinnaquaque vineyard winter time is usually 5 to 7 degrees warmer than Williamson Doré vineyard, and then during the growing season, spring and summer, usually 5 to 7 degrees cooler. So because of that, we get a lot more kind of reddish fruits and white pepper in the Tinnaquaque vineyard, and in the Williamson Doré vineyard, we get darker fruits, we get that road tar, we get that lavender, and we also get black pepper. So it's a difference of 5 to 7 degrees, and that's, you know, that's amazing that that makes that much difference.
Yeah.
Mm.
Boy, it's showing well. I'm getting a lot of blue. I'm getting a lot more blueberry images.
And another thing about this wine is that the range of food that it goes with is really, really amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
It can do delicate, but I like it with a little more hearty food. Doesn't need, it can do spice if it's not too spicy. Really good with andouille sausage.
Oh, yeah. I love it with a good
Cajun.
barbecued, really nice burger, and you know, some nice burger.
Yeah, and ribs. Okay, I know that Michaela did ribs the other night, and she was raving about the 2013 Syrah Williamson Doré vineyard that they had with it. So I would go there, and I like my ribs with a kind of a sweet chipotle glaze, and that goes all over this wine, and the wine goes all over that. So
You're making me hungry, Bill. I like, Chris, anything with lamb, nice simple little lamb chops, the little lollipop lamb chops.
Lamb the other night.
Oh yeah, and we had Dick made his lamb tagine the other night, and it was just, we had it with our 2012 Williamson Doré Syrah. It was just gorgeous.
not bad, huh?
Not bad.
So ageability of Syrah, of our Syrahs, what do you?
Okay, so this went into bottle in 19. So I'd say a fair 8 to 10 years, it's going to be showing really well.
Yeah.
And then if you like it longer than that, feel free to age it. It'll go 15. It's just, you have to expect it to be a little bit different, and match it up properly.
Yeah, I agree. Any more questions about the Syrah, people? Otherwise,
You're tasting good.
they're showing well. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to our 7200, the Range 30 West. This is a wine we've been making not under the Range 30 West, but much longer than that. We originally did a Foothills Reserve, and that was the grandmother of this Range 30 West label. But what Range 30 West means is it's the U.S. Geological Survey coordinates for the Happy Canyon area, so Range 30 West. And this is a Cabernet Franc Merlot blend that we've been doing for a long time. And the Merlot portion comes from the Vogelsang vineyard that we've been working with since 2000. So 20 years working with this Merlot, and it's that old now. And then the Franc is sourced from Happy Canyon. we've moved around a little bit as far as our Cabernet Franc source. We are currently in Sandy and Nez Vineyard, which is a new site east of Vogelsang that is meticulously farmed by Coastal Vineyard Care. And this is a fun one to put together. The Cab Franc is always that herbal end of the blend, and the Merlot brings all that nice plum and softness. And remember that I touched on that in January of 2021, we're going to be assembling this wine from 2019. So it's kind of neat tasting this right now and looking forward to doing the blending on the 19th. We have a lot of good stuff to work with.
Yeah, so Billy, maybe you could address the significance of Happy Canyon and the temperatures and how it's different than from the center of San Ynez Valley, and how
Sure.
different that is.
Yeah, the reason Happy Canyon is unique is that because it's where the end of the San Ynez Valley kind of turns, and so Happy Canyon actually runs north-south and not east-west like the rest of the valley does and like our Santa Maria Valley does. So you have a little bit of infringement on the marine layer. It just doesn't make it in there for the most part. And then because of that, it's much warmer than the rest of the San Ynez Valley AVA. And the soils are hard, yet not shallow. They're nice medium depth clay soils with a lot of serpentine and cobble in them. So it's just this big mess of cobblestones and clay, enough for the roots to penetrate and get deep, but enough cobblestone and rock in there that kind of affect, in the end, some of the terroir of the wine.
Yeah, some of those rocks are pretty big.
Yeah, big chunks.
This wine always reminds me, my dad, Bud, was a pipe smoker when I was a kid, and there was always pipe smoke in the house. And his favorite, we'd go down to the cigar factory in San Luis Obispo, which was a real cigar factory back before it became a restaurant. And we'd go in there with him, and he'd get his plum cake tobacco, which I think was sweetened tobacco. But we always had kind of this sweet plum cake smell around the house. And this Range 30 West, no matter what vintage, always reminds me of that tobacco.
Ah.
So memories of Dad.
So Billy, maybe you could address, because it's different than our the other wines, the barrel regime on your this and your other Bordeaux 72.
Oh, well, these are in barrel. The amount of new oak varies with the vintage and, of course, the yields. In a higher yield year, we're going to have less new French oak. In a lower vintage year, we're going to have a little bit more new French oak. These are in Bordeaux 225-liter barrels, kind of medium toast. Just a few Coopers, mostly Francois Frere and Terrenceau and Orion. Those are our three major Tonneries that we deal with and have been for many, many, many years. And these 7,200 Bordeaux wines are in these barrels for almost 2 years, for 22, 23 months. And then hopefully we bottle them without any kind of fining or filtration. So they are really untouched wines from the get-go.
I think you got to explain that.
No additions.
These are 90-gallon barrels rather than 60, right?
No, These are 60-gallon barrels.
All right, 60-gallon barrels.
So,
So going back to the Williamson Doré Syrah, those are 132-gallon puncheons.
All right.
Okay,
fat bastards.
That's
Yeah.
So,
and those come from Francois Frere, and those are beautiful barrels, puncheons.
they are. Another good question here. What would you recommend the Range 30 West pair with food-wise?
The range, I always go with kind of like wintertime roasted meats or vegetables.
Meatloaf.
It's really nice to be simple. It doesn't need a lot. It just kind of likes that whole texture and the whole texture of just plain roasted meat or vegetables.
Yeah.
It really likes that. You don't need to up it any. Just it really likes plain food.
Katie's got a good question because you referred to the tobacco flavor that you get. She wants to, is it from the grapes or the barrels?
It's from the grapes. The Cabernet Franc is notorious herbal tobacco, pepper, even bell pepper, green bean, and cool vintages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
tobacco and Cab Franc is like that.
And we've got a cheers to dad. Here's to dads everywhere.
Yes.
When you talk about the tobacco smell, my grandfather smoked a pipe and he had the cherry tobacco. So kind of reminds me of that. Here's a good question. What in your mind is the difference between the Foxen wines and the Foxen 7200?
It's purely varietal, or
Yep.
groups of varietals. Our Foxen wines are white and red Burgundian varietals, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, Chenin Blanc, and our Rhone packages.
So
The 7200 wines are all strictly the heavier reds from Happy Canyon,
yeah.
for the most part, and also Estate Cab Franc. Well, the most obvious thing is the bottles.
If it's in a claret bottle, if it's in a claret bottle, it's 7200.
Yes, and in 7200, our white down there is our Sauvignon Blanc, and it is also in a
Here's a great question
claret bottle.
to you, Billy. Personally speaking, how do you like creating blends like Range 30 West as compared to dealing with a single varietal? Great question.
Yeah, you have to be a little bit more left-brained to put these blends together, and so I get the left-handers to help me out, David and Bingo.
So maybe a little creative,
it's a lot of fun. One of the most fun wines that we've had recently to put together has been the Guillermo Grosso, because we've been a little bit heavy on Sangiovese, sourcing from both Williamson Doré Vineyard and Faith Vineyard. That's recently changed, but the Guillermo Grosso is a Sangiovese Cabernet blend, and that's been a lot of fun, and it's been really well received too. A little bit more of a heavier, more aggressive red than this Range 30 West, which I find to be very friendly and a lot more easy than the Guillermo Grosso.
Yeah, and generally speaking, from a marketing standpoint, in the question, going back to the question, the difference between 7200 and the Foxen labels are that most of the wines from under the 7200 label are available only at the winery. All right. Oh, here's a good question. Can you describe the process you use in arriving at the final blend? So I think kind of finishing up on your thoughts on your blending with your left.
Yeah, for the most part, our our approach is that we're making these blends in the vineyard. So we're sourcing this amount of Cabernet Franc and this amount of Merlot to make the range. And then, so in the end point, we're taking care of both of them through their life in the cellar. But now, going back to 2019 that we're getting ready to do, we're going to evaluate these wines individually and see if our thinking worked out and we can just go ahead and blend it, or do we need to fine tune one or the other or both? So
Yeah.
that's the way we go into it.
You know,
We go into it from the growing end.
yeah. So maybe when we can all be together again in person, I know we had a lot of good feedback, and I know Scott Olson attended. You did a blending seminar at the winery. That would be fun to do again someday.
It would be, yeah, it'd be a lot of fun, and maybe have everybody blend their own wine, and we could bottle and put their own label on it.
Exactly.
There you go.
How
Yeah.
about that?
That would be fun. All right. Things to look forward to in 21 and 22. All right. Are there any more questions out there on the Range 30 West or anything?
Wow, we went a long time here.
I know.
Well,
I know.
everybody, we hope that perhaps next time we can have an actual tasting rather than a virtual, although the virtual is the next best thing. And we certainly appreciate all of your interest in
Yeah.
getting involved. And Billy, I've learned a lot today.
Yeah.
Hey, but I want to big thank you for all the great questions. It's been stimulating on my end, and hopefully we answered them all to your liking.
If you're up for it, this is a pretty open-ended question here. How has the environment changed since you started making wine? And how
I touched on that. Heat, fire, smoke, COVID. And it sums up the 2020 year and the 2020 harvest. It was very, very difficult mind-wise. Physically, it was okay as long as we were all, we did our welfare checks every morning, but there was just this fear that somebody wasn't going to show up and then be tested and come positive, and then we'd all have to shut down. And it's not a good thing to wake up to every morning, not knowing if you're going to be able to continue the harvest.
I want to say, Dixon mine and Billy and Becky's thank you to everybody for your support this year. I know we've all have suffered in different ways, and we really appreciate your support. And just a last reminder, there's that 5% additional discount for all three of these wines through the end of the month. So I think that Briley has posted up the code and everything. So anyway, we wish you all a wonderful Christmas, holiday season, New Year, and let's raise a glass to staying healthy.
Get vaccinated.
And yes, get your vaccines, and we'll all get together at some point in 2021.
Thank you for being our friends.
Yes, thank you, everybody. We miss you.
You make us work.
Stay well.